Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Soccer Nation podcast. I'm your host, Kareem Rae. Today, I'm excited to be joined by a special guest, Daniel Ramirez. Daniel, thank you for being here. To kick things off, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Thanks for having me. My name is Daniel Ramirez, and I am a television producer with my specialty over the last 7 years being sports and primarily football, European, and obviously soccer.
Amazing. So before we dive in, Daniel, I want to just get your first touch point on how you got involved in the beautiful game in regards to what you do.
So it's a really beautiful story because it happened through Kobe Bryant. I was a part of a team that documented his final season in the NBA. We struck up a working friendship, and we tried to develop a 2019 Women's World Cup project that buyers passed on because they said nobody watches women's soccer, and it was a journey. A really beautiful journey, and that introduced me to many folks, both at FIFA and at Amazon and different places, and then later on, I sort of caught my first break, but it was through this basketball project that is sitting on a hard drive at the NBA and will someday see the light of day.
Sure. What about we spoke a bit about this offline. You mentioned that you had the chance to go to a few games. What was your first game that you've been to in stadium?
The first, I think it was during the All or Nothing. I got dumped right into. Actually, that's not true. Let me backtrack. Sergio Ramos series for Amazon. That was my first European football experience. I'm embarrassed to say it. Just before that, football was something I watched around when the World Cup came around, but I wasn't very invested. And for the Bernabéu to be your first experience, it was magical. It's another world. It's the fan experience of football is unmatched, and I never saw anything like it on the streets. In Madrid, when a team pulls up, and that was part of our coverage, that we had to cover that. There's the security team that goes ahead in horseback, and these horses at nighttime the hoofs let off sparks. So it's this very dramatic arrival, and the streets are packed to the brim with fans from both sides, almost battling on the street. And so it was nothing I'm not sure there's something like it in American sports.
For sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned, what sport were you again? You were, was it baseball?
I was hockey, baseball, and basketball, but primarily hockey. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So you're a hockey guy, fellow Canadian.
Yeah, that's right.
So now you're after your experiences within the film space, now you gained a little love for soccer. Now we could say
I'm all in. From that job onward, I have not since 2018. I have not done anything but soccer, and so it's I've executive produced projects, and there's a couple of more projects, some scripted stuff, and a couple of other sports projects. But my projects that I have built with my own hands, it's all been football.
Amazing. So
it's a beautiful thing.
Got it. So diving into the first question, you were part of the All or Nothing. Brazil was the first time the national team had opened up its doors completely. How did you navigate the culture, political, and creative challenge of telling the story while earning and keeping the team's trust?
Yeah. So, I grew up near the Brazil border in Venezuela. I mean, I lived all over Venezuela before the civil wars that happened in the 90s, and my mother and I immigrated from there. And in South America, you're exposed to the big three, right? It's always going to be Argentina, Brazil, Colombia. They're always going to be sort of in and out of your world. Venezuela's program still hasn't, it's coming of age still, but so you always wind up cheering for these teams. And there's also a lot of Brazilians in Venezuela. So I started to understand what it meant to the country. And after all the success, to then go through everything they've been going through, over the past decade plus, they there's a general frustration. Obviously, this is a country that lives and breathes football around the clock. And so when I was contacted by Amazon and by Pitch International to put on the project, I said, look, we need to have a real conversation with CBF, with CBF, with the Brazilian Federation, because this cannot be a marketing piece. They're going to kick us out of the country. We'll never be able to step foot in Brazil again. We have got to sort of come to terms with what's happened with the team. And I didn't get any kickback, not from CBF, not from Pitch, not from Amazon. Everybody let me have that conversation. And we get political in the show, and we talk about God, and we talk about just so many layers of Brazil, and that was done on purpose, and it was done with Brazilians. The team that was put around me and suggested by the heads of Amazon Brazil to sort of come on as partners. The directors, like, this was a constant nightly meeting. How do we stay as true as we can? All of these series will get criticism to some extent because you have 42 minutes to try to cram so much story, and all these shows are always ensemble stories. So you have, 4 or 5 major characters, and then you have like 6 to 10 like sort of B characters. It's hard to sort of like get into nuances with ensemble storytelling. And I think people miss that, but I tried my best. And also I really pushed the camera teams to visually, like, those who will get it, but there's a great scene when they play, and when the team plays in Belén, where there's a famous like guy who collects cans on the street during, like, when all the tailgating's going on. And I'm like, let's follow him. And he's part of that opening. And locally, people would be like, hey, that's our guy, and there's also these kids that swim in this pond in front of the Belén stadium. We feature them. And so we were constantly visually like, hey, if you're from here, you're going to catch that we were paying attention to you and your people. But that was very intentional. And I'm just really happy that nobody fought us on that, yeah.
Understood. How, for a production like that, how long does it take to get things approved? You can't just go ahead and go through these things by yourself. You need approval from different groups. So how long did that overall take?
Yeah. So the one of the first things that happens with these projects is that you immediately go and meet with team officials. And, we were even, at the time, we were able to talk to the president at the time of CBF, and we were on WhatsApp. Like, we can literally be like, hey, we're going to do this. And again, we never really got kickback. There was a couple of like political things, like about this journalist who was murdered, that it sort of like was deviating and it was getting into something that it didn't need to anyways. But they never kicked back, and that's a really important thing that always happens. When you show up with these projects, you immediately have a meeting with all the executives from marketing to, as high up as you can go, and you let everybody know your intentions, and you're constantly checking in, and they're constantly on top of you anyways. But having that relationship, that ongoing relationship is super critical to expedite, because otherwise it takes forever.
Got it. What would you say was like the biggest challenge with filming that production?
The biggest challenge was that staying true. Amazon at one point was like, hey, are we having too much of the fans? They were concerned that we were wasting a lot of real estate when we had, Neymar, Thiago Silva, like all these like rock stars. And so finding balance was really the big challenge. And then also, logistically, it was Copa America. It's a national tournament. We had to travel across the entire country. And the balance of giving the guys some space to rest, like the athletes, versus our cameras. Uh, one of the lucky coincidences that I had was that there was a little break in the middle of the production where the players could go back home, and they usually just went back. They're all from mostly playing in Europe, so they were just happy to go hang out with their families. But for logistical reasons, Gabriel Jesus and Fernandinho uh, had to stay behind on the grounds, and we were staying on the grounds too. And so suddenly, all the executives had a barbecue, just like a small barbecue, and Gabriel Jesus and Fernandinho came out, and to be able to talk to Fernandinho, and Fernandinho to open up about his experience with All or Nothing Manchester City and everything that frustrated him about that series and how that series was made. That helped. That was huge to just talk to him and just like, hey, let's figure this out. And one of the things that I told him, I'm like, use us. Like, let us. This is about your country and your team. Here we are, and luckily their desires align with mine, and we were able to talk about the frustration of the fans, which became like a ongoing sort of theme through the show. So, but sometimes you may not get that, and so it's just a matter of finding balance across everything from schedule to budget to how you're filming things, because otherwise, if you swing too much in one direction, that can be the thing that breaks you. If you're shooting too much, if you're pushing the athletes too much, you always have to sort of come back to center to be able to get through a production like that, with a team like that, with a schedule like that. We shot and cut the entire show in 5 months, which is, and we had 800 hours worth of footage. Like we had this army of assistants, like combing through footage constantly, and it was a constant rewriting process. Like it was at that point, it was unheard of. I hadn't heard of a project like that ever.
Yeah, very interesting. So, takeaways. One of the players that wasn't supposed to stayed back.
Yeah.
You guys got to get live feedback from him, which was a great opportunity there for you guys to connect, align, and improve on what's already the works that you guys got going on to create uh, better content. So yeah.
You want to hear something fun? Actually, we strike this middle ground with Gabriel Jesus and Fernandinho about how we're going to approach the show, and they're happy and we're happy, and we're having beers and barbecue, and we get this WhatsApp notification that Neymar had been accused of rape. And at that point, I'm like, well, they're gonna shut down the show. And sure enough, Amazon and CBF allowed us to film, and even like Neymar's family allowed us to capture and talk about it. And it becomes like the biggest turning point on episode 1 of that show. And part of it was that like they were so convinced that it was obviously a framing, and that's what it turned out to be. But we were able to sort of follow it, and again, it just shows how much the athletes wanted to talk about their team and address fans about their frustrations, with the national team.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, usually when something like that happens, the Neymar,
That's it.
yeah,
Shut it down.
or from what I've seen, like for example, in Formula One, the Red Bull head guy was like removed, but they continued the production. So
Yeah.
that's again another amazing takeaway about the filming to continue, and Neymar still being part of the story and to share. That's powerful.
Yeah, and look, and I remember when we were filming, and he has that injury on his ankle during like the first pre-match, and when he broke down crying, I couldn't help but really feel for the guy, because once you step into the microcosm with him, and sometimes I would go alone, and sometimes it would be our DP who would go along with him and be with Neymar. For love him or hate him, that is not a position I envy. it's a very intense life. And yeah, it just like it just felt like the walls were closing in on the guy. But he just, it was just a very intense experience. And yeah, to capture him crying like that, it was like, geez, like this guy's under a serious microscope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like when you mentioned a name, like I'm a fan of Neymar. I love Neymar, and superstar on the pitch. One of the most creative players, like Ronaldinho. How do you as a professional, being in rooms with these rock stars,
Yeah.
how do you keep a professional level uh, in your position?
Yeah. Treating them like humans. I seen them like humans. The the sort of the mystic sort of like feel around them goes away real quick when you got a deadline and you're tracking story and you got to work. But also, once you're around enough athletes, you see how many people come in and out of their lives, and everybody that comes in is sometimes literally physically prodding them and grabbing them as like doctors and trainers, like constantly. It's like these guys become almost robots. Like they're just getting touched all the time. They're getting shifted around all the time. There are marketing teams and branding people. And their schedules are so intense that you become part of the hive of activity around them. And you learn that pretty quickly in sports, and you just need to like be cool. And if you happen to have like an intimate moment with them, be human with them. That was one of the things I loved most about Sergio Ramos, is that and we've maintained our relationship since. It's that we would just talk about life, like like just talk about what's happening in the world. And yeah, it just treat them like humans. And it's funny because I used to get on the Kobe Bryant project, like I would treat Kobe like that. And there were some NBA folks who were like, why are you talking to him like normal? And I'm like, but Kobe's talking normal back to us, like just like a normal human. And they were still caught up in that reverence of, because they weren't around him, the guy 24/7. So when you start to be around people, you just like, you treat them like everyday people. And I feel like most of them appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a huge key right there, is human
Yeah.
relation.
Yeah.
Um, I'll share a story with you offline about that, but that's a key. That is
Yeah.
a key.
Yeah.
Scheduling, deadlines.
Yeah. Yeah.
How,
Yeah.
like, how do you navigate your schedule? Because can you share with our viewers on how packed a schedule can be, and how you still maintain your energy levels, maintain yourself mentally, physically, to continue to produce the work that you guys do to stay
Yeah.
on a deadline?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about sports storytelling is that it comes with baked in beginning, middles, and ends. We all know where we're going. We all know what's happening. Teams plan schedules, at least a year in advance, or the moment that the league sort of tells them exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And that information gets passed on to you, and you sort of you have to roll with the punches and be flexible, and you have to hire crew and a team that also gets that, and then hire great uh, production managers, line producers, and coordinators that know how to pivot and know how to travel well. The thing with sports is that it's always travel. It's rare that you get like home stretches. And even if you get home stretches, it's never going to be the home of a production. So you have to then look at it according to what's ahead. And again, constantly writing and constantly planning. And in a way, television and documentary filmmaking is very similar to sports as well. Like it's just this constant reworking of numbers and budgets and time. And on a personal note, I gotta say, it's rare to hear of a crew that goes like, "Oh my gosh, I've gotten my works out in and I'm eating healthy." It's usually very taxing. It's what you can get. It's what the production can sort of take care of you, because sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere. and you might just be stuck with stadium food, which, as we all know, it's not necessarily the best for you. It's tough. And then in European in soccer and football, the wonderful thing is when a team does integrate you, and they feed you as well, because you're getting the food of the athletes, and that is a big help because everybody's eating healthy. But you know, you wind up running on fumes, and that's where writing comes in, because things get so foggy that if you don't have a clear, like, this is where we're headed, this is where our story is, there's always going to be variables. An athlete can get injured, things might happen in their personal lives, but again, we know what the end of the season is, you know, and ideally they win it all, right? But as long as you understand your themes and where you're gathering and where you're headed, that helps you to sort of get through the fog of war, where you're just like, here's another bus, here's another brick, concrete stadium, here's another hotel. And by the way, like that also teaches you quickly to have empathy for the athletes, because you're like, this is a very strange life. Like, you literally train, go to a concrete building, play in front of thousands, get on a bus, get on a hotel, get on a plane, do it again. And it's just this cycle of like training and playing and training and playing. It's again, you know, it's not all roses and cool commercials and fast cars. It's a very strange lifestyle, man.
For sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned budget.
Mm-hmm.
How much influence do you guys get to have on the budget?
So points are changing. The idea of revenue split with creatives changes a lot. Most of the work that I've done and most of the work that my colleagues do, you don't get points. You just get a fee for your time, and that's it. Unless you developed and cut the deal yourself and you were able to bake yourself in during the development phase, you don't get much. Actually, you don't get any. You know, so yeah, and I've pivoted into more development and more sort of like early stage development of IP, but again, like I'm rarely the majority guy. I'm rarely the guy that like convinced, you know, Novak Djokovic to do a documentary. Like I get brought in a little later in the phase, so my cut's a little different. But yeah, there's not a big point share, especially not scripted.
Got it. Well, hopefully, you know, with what we're talking about behind the scenes, we could change that.
Yeah.
With saying that, could you give our viewers a high level of how you were able to get to the position that you were able to get to with Amazon Prime, and you know, where you currently are?
Yeah, look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I am, you know, for lack of a better analogy, I always use this one. I'm the Bob Odenkirk of unscripted, in that I have done it all. I'm a rare specimen. A lot of people sort of stick to their lanes. I've done everything from Swamp People, Deadliest Catch, Ice Road Truckers, to a lot of journalism. You know, I was part of the WikiLeaks team with the New York Times and the Guardian, and like I've covered natural disasters and wars, and then I've done some photography work. So I'm a rare specimen, and it just requires you to keep your options open, keep sort of being passionate about storytelling and seeking great stories. I've been super fortunate and blessed that I've also had mentors through my life. Like when I started, there was a show, excuse me, on Doctors Without Borders, and when I was in college, amazing show. It didn't do well. It didn't capture much people, but the filmmaking was amazing, and I happened to have met, when I got through my roommate in New York, I happened to meet one of the filmmakers, and she mentored me for years. And then at CBS Sports, excuse me, Sarah Rinaldi, one of the best in the game, in the sports game, she mentored me for years. You know, and so on. So many people that I'm so grateful to. So, but I always sought them out, and I sought people whose work I admire. Johnson McKelvey, again, another, people in the sports world will know Johnson. He's just his work speaks for itself. Jason Heher, who Last Dance, that guy gave me some shots and let me go out and field produce some of his earlier work. So it's just a matter of like of being inquisitive, helping people when you can, you know, and also I should mention Sadhu Kim, who is now like the guy who has taught me the business side of things. Sadhu was former head of Amazon Global Format, and you know, and now I even talk to teams like directly to executives, and I go, hey, like, where are you guys at? And how do I help? And how do we help each other? And how do I make sure that I leave the game now that I'm in love with football? I leave the game better than I found it through all the things that I learned through the 20-year run.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So you also speak many languages too, right? Can you mention the languages that you speak?
Yeah, I speak Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. I'm deep, but not great in my Chinese. Starting to, that's just more of a hobby. And a little bit of French, because having lived in Canada, I think we all did our French immersion classes in high school. So yeah, a bunch of stuff. I think being an immigrant, you just wind up being exposed to so many languages that you wind up being okay at understanding quickly picking up some. Yeah.
Switching gears here, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation a bit, but you're going to have to pronounce it properly for me, please. Chivas El Rabano Sagrado.
Yeah.
You documented the club at crossroads, dealing with leadership change, rebuilding, and a global pandemic. What storytelling choices did you make to capture both the pressure on the field and the drama off of it?
Yeah, Chivas El Rebaño Sagrado was actually supposed to be Chivas All or Nothing. It changed when the pandemic came in and the storytelling sort of had to become something else. And we had to do a lot of remote production. It became just a documentary about them because it just didn't match the franchise anymore. And yeah, the pandemic was brutal. We were the first up and running production, at least on the Amazon side. I don't know about Netflix, but I know that because I had so many calls with like all the lawyers at Amazon to let us continue, not just because of the show, but because it was literally like suddenly you had, 20 people without a job in Mexico, our team. And it just overnight, it was brutal. So it was like a real fight for the crew and for everybody. But yeah, it was so unpleasant. I mean, I don't need to tell the people watching how hard remote work is, and creative work is extremely hard. We had a lot of people quit. We had a lot of people leave. It was so intense. And yeah, Ivan Lopez and Rubén Manuelos, who run Cobra Films, who were the directors of the series, those guys, not only were they local in Guadalajara, but they also had a relationship with Amaury, whose father passes away and he takes over Chivas. And Amaury was also very open to talk about the loss of his father. I think that helped a lot. There's this great scene of his dad sort of yelling at the guys for not giving it their all on the pitch. And they were willing to let us have this like very private moment for us to use to show how committed his father was to excellence. And look, Chivas is in global football. That stadium is incredible. The training facilities are beautiful. The way they take care of their athletes, Liga MX is a tough league because the turnarounds are so drastic. In football, you're winning or we find someone who wins, right? In Mexico, like that's like add like a multiplier to it. So I don't think it was so much about me more than it was about Amaury and Chivas and these local filmmakers willing to deal with all the craziness of the remote work. I'll be honest, like, even I exited early. We were 3 rough cuts in, and a project an NFL project came my way, and at that point I had to deliver my cuts, so I was just like, hey, like I color and online and stuff, and any changes, like um I'm out. But it was literally, we were all burnt out. We were all burnt out, and kudos to everybody who like didn't have the freedom that I had to be like, I did my work, I'm done. Uh, but it was so exhausting, man. Very, very tough.
Got it. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah.
Switching gears here again, Daniel, you've filled some of football's most private moments, which you just mentioned one. You mentioned a few already, with iconics like Sergio Ramos, Neymar, etc. What's your process for breaking down walls so athletes, uh, so they could be vulnerable and share
Yeah.
that authentic feeling that they're feeling when the camera's on and rolling?
Yeah. Like I said, you try to treat them like humans. You meet them halfway. You also let them know to have a few safe words if there's things that can be shown. Um, you know, and again, they're most athletes tend to be special in their own way. They tend to be very sensitive and very open and very aware of almost everything. And so they'll, if you're not coming in with like a big ego, and they'll meet you halfway most of the time. And I still haven't met like an athlete who was unlikable, and thank God, like I haven't gotten you know someone difficult. So everybody thought Sergio was going to be that guy, and he turned out to be like the nicest guy ever. He'll cut your throat on the pitch, but he's a very he's a great human being, and also his family. That was the big thing. Letty Kitchener, who was spearheading the project, she wanted to make the show about family, and once we integrated the family and got to know the family, I think that also helped us. You know what I mean? Like we filmed so much with his parents, for example, and then you treat someone's parents well, and word gets back to the kid. So yeah, and that's part of it. And also going through fires with them also helps a lot. And again, these are things you can't script. Like the Champions League exit. The year after Ronaldo leaves, that's when we come in, and um, and Sergio has 2 yellows back to back, and so he can't play the next Champions League game against Ajax, and Ajax just goes on a scoring spree, and Sergio's in his box, and we're filming him watching the game, and the way he's freaking out. It's palpable how much the guy cares. So people were filming with their phones and leaked it to Marca. Marca tweets it. We could barely leave the stadium because everybody was blaming the loss on us. Like they were looking for a scapegoat. And it was so rough on us to be in the press and to be like, they slandered us in the Spanish press. And we were all like, man, that's awful. And and also the team's morale was terrible. So we show up to Sergio's house the next day, and we're thinking, we were all like, we don't know what Sergio we're gonna get. This was pretty rough. And we showed up, and he had a huge smile, and he hugged us, and he saw on our face that we were sort of upset. And he goes, "When you touch bottom, there's nowhere to go but up." And it was like, that's right, man. And so it's just bonding, taking time with people, and going through fires. And that was a crappy fire to go through. The Spanish press won't. The Spanish press is no joke.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm getting some human gems right here, man. Like these stories right here are powerful, and it's so grounded. So it's very nice to hear. Because I've watched a good amount of documentaries, and there's a difference between watching it and being there and filming it. So these are
Yeah.
behind the
Oh,
scenes.
totally. And that's something that there's like 10 to 15 of us, I would say, that are sort of in like the top echelon of the genre. And I know because I talked to a lot of those guys like we're all trying to push that, and it's a very difficult thing to try to do, to like put you in it as a viewer. Um, it's tough, but we try. But the experience of making these things, like it's so much different. It's just so much more intense, you know, and trying to bring that intensity into the screen is that's the art. That's the thing.
Pretty cool though. I mean, you're in a space of creating, so that's amazing. Um, having worked across, the Americas, Europe, and Asia, and also speaking multiple languages, how has your global perspective shaped the way you portray football communities and their unique identities?
Yeah. So the one thing that also has made me fall in love with football is that it's the great unifier. Uh, apart from religion, I haven't, I haven't yet experienced something that brings people together quite like football. And I think it stands apart even in sports. Um, what we don't have here in America is the legacy, 100-year-old legacies on some of these teams around the world, and how much these teams mean to everybody. You know, globally, everybody's hustling, everybody's grinding, and to watch your team on the weekend, to watch a bunch of guys that represent your community pull off this magic that happens on that pitch over 90 minutes. Uh, um, it means so much to people. It brings so much joy, and even when the team loses, like being together with like the people around you and your community, even if you're at home watching, you know that the people that are watching, like there's like this sort of commonality, emotional commonality. And so that's the biggest thing I learned, is that like it's sort of this beautiful global community, um and locally trying to understand and respect, and when you're working, trying to honor that. But when you're not working and you happen to be there, and you can sort of share with them, like listening and enjoying what they're going through, it's I think that's what it really taught me. There's and not many of them are that different. They may have different styles and languages, and obviously local sort of desires, but ultimately it's that thing of like there's 11 guys on the pitch that are giving me proof that I can sort of like get to my dream, and hopefully we can experience like something brand new that has never been seen, and together we can sort of celebrate this like communal win, you know. Yeah, the sport is so inspiring. It's amazing, man. I don't know, and you probably experienced it too because you've been an athlete. Like there's this strange like untangible, like it's almost like a spiritual thing. Like how do you capture the magic of football and what we all experience? It's amazing, and it just happens to be universal.
Yeah, that's why it's called the beautiful game. I mean, it's the best. We got to put your hockey to the side. I mean,
Yeah. Well, hockey's mostly pain at this point.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, soccer's the most watched sport around the world, right? It's the most popular sport, the most played, etc. So it's the biggest.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but to your point of fans, like I could speak to England. I know Brazil's like this too, but for example, fans in England, if their team loses, you're talking about that history, that 100-year plus experience. If their team loses, they're upset for a week,
Yeah.
right? Like it hits different, right? I mean, I could speak for the Canadians/Americans. I'm a green card holder, and it's not like that for us yet.
Yeah.
I think that's going to take some more time. I think MLS has been around for 30 years. The EPL has been around for 100 plus years, so we
Yeah.
have some time to go on the American
Yeah.
side, and Canadians young,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. By the way, what were you? If you don't mind me flipping the table a little bit, what was your relationship like with fans? That's something that I haven't really gone down too many rabbit holes with certain athletes. What's that like when you do lose, and their take on it? Like, is it intimidating, or is it something that you can sort of navigate easily, or did you have to get used to it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I haven't played at the highest level yet, if I ever get the chance. But quote unquote semi-pro levels, it's you at the level I played at. For me, you always want to win,
Yeah,
and for yourself, for the team, for the results, for the fans, for your loved ones, and that's the most important thing per se. And when you do lose, those do happen. It's to see your loved ones in the stand or the fans be there and see how they feel and come out and watch a 90-minute game when they
yeah,
could do whatever else they want to do in their time is. I mean, it touches you and it
yeah,
makes you want to do better. But at the end of the day, I think that on the human side, it just shows that that interest and engagement of
yeah,
support. So it's a nice thing to have.
yeah,
Um, and I think when I'm just thinking about it now quickly, like some of my favorite memories are when I was a bit younger here in Canada, and I used to play for a club called Woodbridge. It's like mini Italy per se, and
yeah,
our rivalry team was Vaughan, and we used to have like 200 plus parents come out to these games, and it was like there were battles, man. So like
yeah.
those are some of my favorite memories. But yeah, I think that support aspect is nice.
Nice. That's awesome. Um, yeah, no, yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring that later in other projects. But it's hard because like they play, most of these athletes in these shows play for so many thousands that I think it might not be as personal as like when you play in lower tiers where fans can sort of where you have the 200 Woodbridge parents as as a fellow Canadian, and I know Woodbridge they they don't hold their thoughts. They don't have private thoughts in Woodbridge a lot. They'll let you know how you're doing.
Yeah. So I'm not too sure how it is now, but like back in my time, like parents used to go at it in regards to like exchange
Yeah,
a few words, like that's how
yeah,
passionate, that's how serious these games were. But
yeah.
good times,
I'm
good times.
sure. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure. Woodbridge, man. I haven't heard about Woodbridge in years.
I was saying that platforms like Amazon Prime Video are raising the bar for sports storytelling.
Yeah.
Based on your experience, where do you see the biggest creative opportunities and risks for the next generation of football documentaries?
Yeah. Online, independently. That's really, you know, um, I think brands and teams should be collaborating more to have more independence to tell stories that aren't necessarily tethered to um, a lot of the formatting and a lot of sort of the rules. Um, and I would also encourage athletes to sort of be part of that conversation, or for teams to include the athletes in that process. I know it's tough because you largely want to leave athletes alone, but as media becomes more entrenched in the sport and the business, I think you have to engage your rosters into a bit of the vision. And I'm sure that it can be a slippery slope, but this is just my suggestion to the football world because storytelling, media, and user generated content is not stopping. It's coming fast, and it will keep coming faster. Um, yeah, and empowering media teams within uh, organizations as well, pushing them to sort of explore creatively and provide them the training for better storytelling, because anyone can make short form content for their teams, but those who make great story um, and understand the local audience well, I think stand to gain a lot. You look at a team like Cadiz in the second division of Spanish football, and those guys are like inching on 2 million subscribers. Like most US teams don't have 2 million subscribers, and Cadiz is not, it's like a couple 100,000 people city. Actually, I should check. I should check Google. It might be bigger. Apologies to all my Cadiz people in Spain, but again, it's not a big city. It's not 2 million. It cannot be. And so it's a small coastal tourist town that has a great team that has been at the top layer of La Liga. Those guys are finding a way to, and that executive team obviously like has found a way to engage outside of their circle. And so, and it's been through good storytelling. Their media's awesome, their strategy's awesome. And I think that's part of it. If people want to continue to pursue legacy style shows like the ones I've done, or all these all or nothings, all these different formats, I think it's valuable. I think, you know, those platforms are obviously great, and they're the ones that get the most attention now. But I don't think that's going to last for long. Their strategy has always been based around getting the Mount Rushmore of teams, or just a very interesting and unique story, like what happened with Wrexham. But there's only so many people at the Mount Rushmore of sports or teams that can sort of like be valuable to Netflix and Amazon, and their return is good usually, because they're subscription based usually, and for the teams it's good exposure for marketing to make money, but that model is just changing so quickly, and so the more independent and the more brand collaborative this content is, I think that's where the growth is, independently. And you know, if anybody with big pockets is watching, give me a ring. There's a million things that I would love to sort of explore, and there is a better way to distribute and to help teams sort of pull this off. And I'm sort of dancing around it, and I'm still sort of cooking it, all for the benefit of the sport. Like, that's the thing. Now that I'm sort of hooked, how do we make these stories better? You know, and how do we help small teams do bigger and better work, and at least find their niche audiences, you know,
For sure.
in their communities.
To give, you know, investors that have the financing for it, or you know, entertainment investors, etc. In your experience, how do, you know, just to give a perspective, how do sports-based reality shows, documentaries make money, and what are the main factors that determine whether they're profitable or not?
Yeah. So it's a very broad question. So you can make money through the licensing of the project if you independently finance it. And it also depends on what kind of deal. If it's through a legacy media place, like let's say Amazon, like it's on the deal you cut with the buyer. And also, again, there's a lot of factors, like, because there's usually a lot of licensing of footage that you also have to consider, which also sort of digs into your budget, and the idea is always to execute the best possible production and story, and have enough of a percentage on the back end. It you know, in the heyday, like like maybe 10 years ago, through since before the pandemic, like there was just this insane buying frenzy, and teams were making a lot of money. There's a lot of big teams, big teams across Bundesliga and Premier, that are waiting for someone to show up with a big paycheck just to make series. But I'm not sure those paychecks are coming anymore. So it's not as profitable off of the initial transaction. It's profitable long term because of the exposure that it brings, the marketing that it brings. You know, you get a guaranteed exposure on global platforms like Amazon and Netflix that you might not get anywhere else, or that it would take a very smart approach on independent platforms. So it's a mixed bag. It works for certain teams. I would tell every team should be documenting their journey, because, like, I always tell people, right now is the glory days of your team. It doesn't matter if you're the Lakers, or it doesn't matter if you're Real Madrid. The NFL is a perfect example of that. The NFL, they got fortunate with the Sable family, who approached them in the 60s to document the Super Bowl, and that evolved into NFL Films. And NFL Films, I'm not sure we would be having the conversation that we're having about the value of sports leagues and the NFL being at the very top if it wasn't for NFL films. And you can ask Roger Goodell that. He'll tell you the same thing. Everybody who's ever run the NFL will tell you that. NFL Films has done what no one else in the history of humanity has ever done when it comes to storytelling in sports. They set the format. Everything you see, even slow motion photography in sports, those guys did it. Leagues and teams need to start thinking that way. You need to start thinking, how am I entertaining, telling authentic stories, and also like working with great brands and great creators to create a voice that is uniquely ours. So when we do approach these legacy people, we have something that's valuable to them and that it'll also kick value back. But if you just show up as just like a brand new team, you know, a lower tier team and say like the Saudi Pro League, that's going to be a very tough sell to the buyer. And it's probably not going to make you much money or much exposure. So it's a bit of a dance. I'm not sure I gave you the answer, like a buttoned up answer, because everything is so mercurial right now. Of course, it's going to help you get a legacy series, legacy media show. But the pursuit of that should come with your own efforts, and at least like an effort to like understand where you're going media wise and story wise as a franchise. Like you should know, because that's also going to determine like who you are as a club, period. Forget about the content. Like, what do you want to be? Like, what kind of club do you want to be? And you're watching, you know, Tottenham and like other huge clubs go through that identity crisis, right? Like they hang on to this idea and it's like, okay, we got to rebrand. And I'm wearing their shirt and I wish the best to Tottenham, but every club should like, or at least like, I hope the board and, you know, look at what's happening at Man United, right? It's like, it's a team that's like, where do you guys want to go? Like, who do you want to be? Not winning. Everybody, you can win and you can lose. What's your team? Where are you going? Well, and so that can help you determine when you strike at a legacy deal and how you make that profitable. A very long, it could be a lot of hot air, what I just said, but it's just because there's so much going on in media right now, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And we spoke about this offline too. Like, I agree with you 100% that, especially the opportunity, what's going on in the US with, MLS franchises are like 500 million plus, right? To get in,
Yeah.
that's their boys club. But example, USL 1, USL Championship, way lower franchise fee to get in. I mean, those are going up too, but much more viable than MLS. And, you're talking about starting a club from scratch, like choosing the name with the community, choosing a logo, customizing it with the community and building a brand new stadium, potentially a mixed use development project. And like having an opportunity to document all of that from the ground up, just like as you had mentioned with NFL. Huge opportunity. And we spoke about this offline in regards to like the Hearts of Pine are doing that. You got New Mexico United that shared their documentary on YouTube. I mean, the Ports of Pine, Hearts of Pine are doing it on YouTube as well. So the question I have for you is, how can a USL franchise create high level, obviously they could do the documentary piece, but I think the key thing would be distribution of platform. How could they be on a platform like Amazon Prime Video or on Netflix?
Yeah. Those platforms are always going to look for these big names and big draws that makes the spend worth. Or, like I said, like a very interesting story with big stakes. So I think first off, whoever you're going to hire in your media team, what I see across most clubs is people that are a couple years off of college. Maybe they have some experience. And every now and then you do have veterans. But I think all media teams across sports, not just soccer, need story training. And a clear example of that is what happened with the Manchester City documentary and the Real Madrid documentary, right? Like across the board, most people didn't enjoy it. And again, it's not that these guys aren't talented. It's just that their brains are wired for short form. And so when they go and try to execute this, in the legacy space, your viewers are likely going to consume stories a certain way. And so you need to also understand how to speak to both sides of your audience, to a global audience, especially, right? Like you need to sort of keep that in mind. It can't just be the language that you've always had. So making sure that you're documenting your club for all your purposes requires you to train and to allow you, when you hire these creatives, to not just be guys with a camera cranking out media, but guys that are sharp enough and that you've invested in, right, as an organization, to be great storytellers. So then when you do go and knock on those legacy doors, you have the language that they understand. And I think that's going to become more prevalent as USL teams and MLS teams try to expand globally. You're going to have to learn to talk to people, and it's just we all have the same reactions to storytelling because we're all human, right? Like we all have these things that we want to hang on to, but that, like, these universal themes that we all connect with, identity and hope and pride and all these different things, but they're executed differently across the globe. That's why try watching a sports series out of Netflix Korea. It's like it can do crazy numbers, but it's a different, like, it's going to take an American brain a second to get that format because they tell stories a specific way. And so again, like, your team just needs to understand what it wants to do and document in a way that when you do go out to legacy folks, you have something, you at least have a great story while you get your Mount Rushmore EP, an executive producer that can help your effort, or you 3 USL teams come together and try to tell their journey of starting, or the entire league right now trying to, like, come up and eventually compete with MLS. I don't want to put words in USL's mouth, but that's what it feels like, right? Like, we're going to finally have a relegation system in our country, which we've never had in any sport. And so that's exciting, right? So there's something there for USL, or at least a handful of teams, to come together and then do that offering to a legacy buyer. If it's presented, if the materials and the way and the language and what you're presenting make sense for a legacy buyer, if they get it, how you want to tell it. I think people forget also with those deals, you have to present a very clear vision when you pitch. You have to, and that's where a lot of projects falter when, like, I think we're all disappointed in a way by the Messi series. Like, we thought it would be a little bit more like the Beckham series, right? The Beckham series was great because Fisher Stevens the director had that time with Beckham. And by the way, I spoke to the Fullwell guys and all those people early in development of that project. And that project has years of thought and development into the story. And then you find a great storyteller and they make it better. So that's the other thing. Like, the legacy guys want these like megalith guys, but sometimes they sign on to this deal and they don't even know what they're going to get, like, because they just cut a deal where we got Messi, but what's the vision and the story? And then that falters. So we're all prone, doesn't matter who it is, to pitch these very hard shows. These shows are very hard to sell. You get that pitch time and you can mess it up by not being prepared and firing on all cylinders and having your vision for the story fleshed out.
Great context. And going back to USL, that could be a huge opportunity because MLS just came with their documentary. I think it's called Onside.
Yeah.
I mean, USL's leading on promotional relegation. That's a cool story in itself.
It's huge.
So yeah.
I think USL also has this, like, I don't know what it is. I haven't cracked it yet, and I'm sure people on Reddit and everywhere else will understand it. But the grassroots thing about USL is what's fascinating. There's this fervor when you go and you sort of consume the conversations and the media that's being created around what's coming and around USL teams. I don't know, man. It's beautiful. There's this raw sort of, like, desire for something real. It's almost like, I don't know. There's like a scrappy we're going to conquer the world vibe going on with it. And the communities respond. They're selling out these tiny little stadiums. And like, there's people that don't get into games and stuff. Like, what is that? It's interesting. It's really interesting. Again, I haven't put a ton of thought, but every time I sort of watch USL stuff, I'm like, this is fun, you know? And by the way, when you have something like that, the legacy people might not get it, but a smart brand or a smart team of brands, they'll get it. Go online and do it yourself. You know, don't wait, because these are your glory years. You know,
For sure. The last question I have is, with the surge in professional club owners wanting documentaries to tell their team story, do you see yourself positioning to capitalize on this growing demand? And if so, how?
yeah. I mean, right now I'm doing a lot of consulting, and I'm trying to do more, and I'm you know, I'm also doing a lot of stuff in tech, but it's tech related to sports. I think sports got me. There's a couple of scripted things floating around, but when you're a creative and you're in this world, there's always projects floating around and people pitching you things and things that you know, to do. But I just love sports, and in particular football. And so um, I'm hoping to leave the game better, because it's given me so much. And you know, it's just I'm so grateful. And obviously, who do I thank, right? But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to the sport. I don't, man, it's been such a beautiful ride, and I've learned so much, and it's made me a better storyteller, and it's made me appreciate community a lot more. And that I'm hoping that I can consult teams and help build strategies and help leagues as well. You know, I'm actually trying. There's a couple of leagues that I really care about that are not the cool kids, that I'm trying to sort of see if I can get in and like and just help out with business and marketing strategies and media strategies.
For sure. Well, you know, to drop some seeds, I hope that we could potentially work on a collaboration that we're talking
Yes,
about in the scenes, and
for sure.
capture the documentation of a new birth of a new club
That's
in
right.
USL and a new market. So super
Yeah.
exciting coming, guys.
Yeah.
We've been in the works for a while, but again, Daniel, once again, I truly appreciate you taking the time to share the stories that you know you've throughout your journey in your space, and the amazing work that you're doing and continuing to do. And I'm glad that you're on our side. No more put that NHL away. You're on the soccer.
No, look, and I'm done with NHL. It's too painful. The teams that I like, just well, which you know, maybe that's part of it. The teams that every team I've done, and my dad sent me a text and he said, every team you've documented wins. And you know, I documented Tottenham at the beginning of their Ange Postecoglou journey, and they won. And it's like, and I was like, yeah, that's true. Like in football, every team I've documented. So there you go. So that's a good thing for your team. If I get to document you guys, then as Ange Postecoglou used to say, like I always win in my second year. So maybe you guys win in your second year.
There is. Well, we're gonna get us, you know, a good amount of sprinkle of your good luck, and you know, it's possible because Rhode Island was like a new team, I think, in 2025, and they won almost the entire league. But I think they won like their. I'm not too sure how it's structured, but
Like
Rhode
their
Island won
division.
their first season in their group. I'm not too sure the exact words to use there,
There
but
you go. Yeah.
possible. There have been clubs that have done it, so we could be the next once we get there.
Yeah. Who knows?
For
But yeah, in the meantime, you guys are gonna give it the best shot, and if I can be of help along the way, I'll be happy to do so. But thank you, and thank you for this podcast. It's great, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Daniel, well, thank you for being on the One Soccer Nation podcast. Thank you.
Okay, have a good one.